Hi guys, it's Tony Robbins. You're listening to Habits and Hustle. Crush it.
Today on Habits and Hustle, we have Jason Harris. Jason is the CEO of the award-winning creative agency Mekanism. He's also the co-founder of the Creative Alliance and the author of the national bestseller, The Soulful Art of Persuasion. The book highlights the 11 habits you need to become more authentically or soulfully persuasive and how to become a master influencer. Harris works closely with brands such as Peloton, Pepsi, United Nations, and HBO, just to name a few. And under his leadership, Mekanism was named Ad Agency's A-List and twice to the best places to work. Harris has also been named in the top 10 most influential social impact leaders, as well as he's been on the list of 100 people who make advertising great. His methods are studied in cases at Harvard Business School. Please listen to this podcast and learn some of those 11 habits to become much more persuasive. Enjoy. By the way, Jason, First of all, how ironic. Okay, this is so coincidental. You're coming on the podcast today, and lo and behold, what's the first thing that came up on my feed today was you won CEO of the Year.
I did, yes.
I can't believe that.
That's why we have to redo the podcast.
Exactly. That's why we're really redoing it for all of those people who want to know and will know. I can't believe that's amazing.
Yeah, I was pretty psyched. It's good.
So what you won CEO of the Year for Mekanism, but who was the person what was the name of the outlet or whoever who did it?
It was like for advertising. You know how you have your fitness trade magazines?
Yeah.
Or websites. There's 4 for advertising. There's Ad Age, Ad Week, The Drum, and Campaign. And so this was for The Drum, which was it's really like started in the UK. It's big. It's like the biggest one in Europe, but they also have one in the US.
That's amazing. So how does that happen? Do you get nominated or what's the process?
You get nominated, and then they have like 5 finalists, and then they have industry judges who vote on it, basically.
That's amazing. So this is a great way to start the podcast, actually, right?
I mean, I was thrilled, but I'm also, I'm a little humble. Like, it's not something I like when other people mention it, but it's a weird thing to mention. Hey, and I won CEO.
I know.
You know what I mean? It sounds like super cocky.
It doesn't really, though. I mean, considering the fact that, in your space, what you do for a living, you'd want people to know and you'd want to tell people because that's more business on your part, right? Like that's how you're going to get more clients. That's how you're going to get more businesses and brands to work with you guys, which is
absolutely
right. So this is a great segue into this podcast. I'm talking to Jason Harris, who is now the CEO of the Year, according to Drum.
Right. Yeah.
Who is also who is the CEO
I
of
wonder
Mekanism.
also, does that last 1 year and then it expires?
That's a really good question.
You just always say that.
Well, I'm going to tell you something that whenever I make a list of some kind, like, women, like women entrepreneurs or like fitness people, like I think it's like evergreen. Like my last fitness list that I was on was like, I don't know, 6 years ago, 5 years ago. And people still talk about it. Like when I'm on interviews, they're like, oh yeah, like she's in the top 100 of fitness entrepreneurs, blah, 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 blah. And I think to myself, yeah, but that was like, in 2004, but I don't say anything. So I think it's evergreen. I think
you just added to your bio. Yeah.
Yeah. You added to your bio. And I think it's super impressive. I mean, your bio in itself is super impressive. Nevertheless, it's really amazing. Can you tell us what Mekanism even is? What you guys do?
Sure. Yeah, we're a creative advertising agency. So I started the company. I co-founded it 16 years ago. Can you believe that? I don't know.
Wow.
Yes, 16 years ago. And
you must have been like 14.
No, I was not. But I always knew I wanted to, what it's like to have that entrepreneur gene. You're trying to figure out an angle to get your own thing going.
Right.
And you're always trying to figure out how to do it. And then you're worried if you leave your job and start something, how are you going to make ends meet until the company starts making money. And so I worked at a lot of different agencies. I always knew this is what I wanted to do. This was my path. A lot of people find their path or they pivot in their career, but I always knew I wanted to go into advertising since I was a kid, which is really weird, I know. But
wow. Well, why was that? What was your forte, your specialty, your passion?
I really love the idea of branding. I've really always been into design and logos and identity. And really, I always love storytelling, and I'm a big music fan. And I always loved how bands kind of branded themselves with their names and their logos and, what they wore. And so that was sort of part of it. And then as I watched TV as a kid, this is obviously before streaming, way before streaming, I would watch ads on TV and I would really respond to them or think about what they were selling or the angle they took and why. And now my kids do it with me when we watch ads we're watching sports and we watch ads. We always like dissect the ad.
Of course.
And I don't know, I just always did that. I was always excited around Super Bowl time when the ads were coming out, and we had a Super Bowl party at my house, and I'd tell everyone to keep it down so I could watch the ads. I've just always really been into that, and I thought it was a great intersection of, art loosely and commerce. And so I just was like, okay, as soon as I get out of college, I'm going to try to find a job in the field. And I did promotions, like field promotions for a while. I did like inflatable Miller Genuine draft cans, if you see those.
Totally.
Those were big for a while. So I started in the field. Then I worked at the design shop. Then I worked at a lot of big name agencies that I got jobs at. And I would always sort of keep a notebook on what I liked about the culture or how someone was a leader. I was sort of studying it, knowing at one point I want to break out and start my own thing. And the opportunity came when there was, I was in San Francisco at the time. I'm in New York now, but there was a group of friends sort of in the industry, and one guy was a tech guy, someone else was a designer, someone else was a film production person, and I had the agency experience. And it was sort of like the super friends coming together with our different backgrounds, and that's how we started the company. And we had, we would do stuff for free. This is something I always talk about. I'm not sure if we talked about this prior, but we spent like a year pitching brands and doing, creative work for them, really just to produce it and make it without charging them, so that we could quickly on our website have like big brands and big logos. And so we sort of took a mulligan the first year of making money. Mm-hmm. And our investment was, we were like blowing through what we had saved and barely making any kind of payroll. We had like maybe 2 employees, and we would just do work and produce stuff to say that we worked with Microsoft or some other big brand, and whether they used it or not or ran it or not, we could say that, hey, we did a job with this brand, which allowed us to have work and case studies to then get paying gigs. And so I came to that conclusion pretty quickly, even though we all had different experiences from our backgrounds. Unless someone says, hey, what have you done, or point me to your work, or are you, whatever, the 100 most influential, health and fitness guru, you don't have any credibility on your own. And so we really spent, a period of time just building that up before we went out and competitively pitched against other agencies and tried to get the real money. So that was sort of our approach.
No, I like that. I always tell that to people, that you have to do a lot actually in the front end that is for free. You got to like actually prove yourself. Unfortunately, a lot of people are like, I don't want to do, I know my value, but a lot of times you may know your value, but someone else has no idea what your value is. And to leverage that is really important. Those names, like I did a lot of that myself, so I understand that. So how would you even do that? Would you approach a company and say, I will do this campaign for you for free? Or what was the process even to get to that point to even suggest and offer your services for free?
So, we all had some contacts from working at other places. And for a long time, we would study a brand. Like, I don't know, we did work for MTV and Sega and Microsoft. And we would sort of try to find what their pain point was, or what something that we thought they needed to talk about or bring to the market more. So we would kind of strategize and study that. And then we would come up with like 3 ideas and present it. And we would make a meeting by saying, sometimes we would just reach out and say, hey, we have a bunch of ideas. No commitment. I just want, we've been studying your business and we want to present them to you. And we get some friend hookup or connection to somebody. And then we'd come in with these ideas. And I'd say, 3 out of 10 times we did that, we would land something and then we would go make it. But it was, a lot of work and a lot of guesswork. And we also send emails where we have a bunch of ideas. And if they didn't respond, we wouldn't come up with ideas. And then if they said, all right, I have a half hour on Tuesday, we'd like frantically try to come up with some concepts that we could go pitch.
Yeah.
And so we actually, the biggest one we did, this was when we were a little more established, but we went to Pepsi, and I sat down with the CMO that I got introduced to, the CMO at the time, and I said, what's your biggest pain point? And he said, we have this Super Bowl halftime show, but we don't have this. This was the first time they sponsored the halftime show, and it was with Beyonce. And we don't have an idea to run during the halftime show. We are lacking a concept. And this is probably like in October, and the Super Bowl was in February. And so in that case, I sort of put the ideas that I had that had nothing to do with Super Bowl, I'd never showed them. And I said, all right, I'll be back in a week with some ideas. And then we went back to the kitchen and came back with ideas. And there, we landed one that he loved, where we did a user-generated ad with introducing Beyonce when she was about to perform, where people would send in submissions, and we stitched together this Super Bowl ad. And that got us into Pepsi, and we started doing a ton of brands, but we came up with a concept, for free, and he paid us to make it ultimately. But yeah, so that's the kind of hustle we did when we were starting out. And then you build up a name. We've been at it for a long time now, but after a number of years, you get a reputation and your clients recommend you, and you build up a name. And, we pay, we have a marketing people on staff, and we have a PR firm that we pay. And so that PR really is great sort of pull strategy, because it pulls in clients because they hear about you, like with awards, speaking, podcasts, that type of exposure really gets your company known. And then it's more of a pull versus push marketing strategy, where you're not knocking on doors, but you're trying to figure out which calls you want to take on and which clients you want to go after. So
I like
but it
that.
takes time. It takes time.
I have a couple of questions that you just said from what you just said. First of all, I wanted to say that, so that's so interesting. So of the Beyonce Pepsi halftime show, that was how many years ago?
Maybe 7.
7 years ago?
Maybe longer, maybe 8.
I think that is a great case study for people to hear and listen to, because the fact that is like the biggest marketing experiential, experience or platform in the world. And you, as a company, did that one for free as a concept. I think that's like, you would think that Pepsi would have paid you guys millions of dollars to come up with that concept. And that was free to get the business, which I think was, yes, they paid you for the actual production. But exactly. The actual concept, you would think that you guys would be in the room for a year, for a year prior, trying to figure that out. That to me is unbelievable.
Sometimes when people, this is like a great sales strategy is trying to figure out whatever business you're in, what your clients' pain points are, and that's where they really need the most help. And then you take that in and listen, and then you come back with a solution that can apply to any business that you're in.
So did Pepsi from that point become one of your big clients in terms of all their different marketing or experiential events or
so then we started doing I think we did like the next 4 Super Bowl halftimes for them, and then they became an agency of record, and then we started doing other Pepsi brands from that. So it turned into millions and millions of dollars, and then I moved to New York because we were working with Pepsi so much that I had to be closer to them, and opened a New York office, and that was the deal.
So then
I'm going to look up this year because it's bothering me.
No, go ahead. I'm curious.
I think it had to be. I have a bad sense of time.
Well, I think it was about 7 years ago. I think
it was
you're right.
2013. So that was
8 years ago. Okay.
8 years ago. Yes, it was 8 years ago. Yeah.
So as a company, were you guys even profitable by that point, or?
Yeah, we were profitable. Probably we were profitable about 2 years in, a year and a half into the business, and we've grown organically. We've never taken any investment money. But what happened was we really started as a digital production company, and then we moved into, we kind of did viral marketing for a long time when it was easy to put content online, and if it was good, it would get millions of views, before YouTube was so inundated with everything. So we kind of pivoted the company several times. And in 2010, we went from really a digital production company, then a viral marketing company, and then we became a full service agency. So we had to hire account management people, strategy people. So we had to really grow. And the reason why we did that was I had about, 40 employees at the time. And when you're doing production work, you're kind of going project to project to project. And when you're in the agency world as an advertising agency, clients typically will hire you on retainer, so you'll get paid every month for your staff. And so you can count on the money. It's much more consistent. And so I wanted to move to that model versus the sort of hand-to-mouth model. And so that's really what made us, make that change. And so at that point, when we pitched that Super Bowl idea, we were, as an advertising agency, we were only a couple years old. And every time you pivot, you sort of have to rebuild your reputation as doing this other thing.
Right.
Because everyone still thinks of you as the other thing you did, especially if you're not changing your name, doing a name change or rebranding. So then you kind of have to reset and build up the credibility in the other space.
Well, my question is going to be now is, how do you do that well? How does somebody really pivot and then gain a reputation for doing something that's different than what they were doing before when they're moving and evolving in their career? How did you do it?
Well, I've always believed in taking, whether it's smart or not, I always believe in doing big changes and big moves all at once, and not sort of dipping your toe in. And, when we started the company, it was like, quit your job, start this company. When we changed and pivoted, one day we had a website that said we were a production company. And then literally we built a new website, and then we hit go. And the next day we said we were something else. And we didn't do it. I'm not saying that's right for everyone, but we didn't take baby steps. We just made a bold move, even before we had the staff to pull off this sort of new role. And we just said, well, if we build it, they will come and we'll figure it out. And so it, happened to work out for us. I think transitioning slowly might be better for some people, or, morphing into it. But I kind of firmly believe when you're toggling between 2 or 3 worlds, you're not putting all your eggs where they need to go, and you're not doing it with enough sort of force and commitment. And so I always believe in when you change, you just got to change, and people will catch up on your team, and you just gotta have to say, this is what we do now.
Yeah.
So that's my philosophy. Also, I will say at the time, when early on in the company, when we started, I wasn't, married. I didn't have a family. I didn't have, it's easier to start out when you don't have all those commitments, and, when you don't have a mortgage and all that stuff to worry about. So when we started the original company, we were, we were a little freer to eat ramen and not make money, which
Right.
is not the case now. When we pivoted the company, we could do that because we had, years and years of experience and profit, and we had money in the bank saved up in the company. So it was easier to go down. I think we lost 50% of our revenue when we made that transition. And then in the second year, we were higher than we were before. So we did dip down to get, 2 steps backwards.
Right.
3 steps forward. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. You said something also about the pull and push strategy. So what is that exactly? I like that you were saying.
So I always believed also in business that when you're starting and you're building something, you're doing a lot more of networking and knocking on doors and cold calling and doing favors and just trying to build your network and build those connections and keep that network going, and doing a lot of favors and, meetings for free and ideas for free. And then you get to a point where you sort of build a base, and then you invest. When you have some money, you invest in PR, you invest in marketing on behalf of the company, you invest in getting your name out there and spending energy speaking and flying to events, and just really trying to get people to say Mekanism, 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 and know the name. And, if you're doing habits and hustle, it's the same thing, right? It's then you get to a place where your name is out there, and you're speaking on television or writing an article on Entrepreneur or whatever you might be doing, but it gets your company's name out there. And so that to me is the pull strategy, where over a period of time, instead of knocking on doors, people are knocking on your door. And then you can really determine who you want to work with, and you have a little more choice in the matter. And so there's that transition sort of happens over time, but you have to invest. Instead of investing in case studies or your business or cold calling, you're investing in getting branding and putting your name out there to get those calls to come in. So that's like push for the push transitioning into the pull strategy for your business.
I love that. By the way, so is Pepsi not a client anymore of yours?
Well, we were working with them for a while. Then we went and worked with Coke, and you can't, in your master services agreement, you can't work with both. And then we won Quaker, which is Quaker Oats, Hots, Chewy bars, there's a lot of brands under Quaker, and that's part of the Pepsi family. So we couldn't work with Coke anymore. And now we're back at Pepsi but working with Quaker.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow. So, how did you even get the Coke business when you were working with Pepsi anyway under it? Like, how did that I'm sure Pepsi wasn't very happy about that. I'm surprised.
No, but the Pepsi business had slowed down for us. And then we got invited to pitch something at Coke. And then when we won it, we had to sever our ties with, you had to write ourselves a contract that, we can't work together anymore to sign the Coke contract. And then the Coke business we were working on sort of didn't work. The product didn't work that we launched. And then
what was the product?
Well, it's still around, but it's called Peace Tea.
What is it called?
Peace Tea.
No, I don't remember. I
No,
never heard
it's
of
got
it.
like a peace sign on it.
Yeah. Was
Yeah.
that one of the on the, failures? I mean, I was going to ask you later on anyway, like some brands that kind of were really hard to launch and the winners and the losers, so to speak. Would the Peace Tea be on the loser side?
No, because it was just small and it's still around. It just never blew up, it never like really caught on.
What would you say, for a company of your stature and like when you're dealing with companies like Coke and Pepsi that are like, Fortune 50 companies, obviously, what would be like the retainer? Like, give me a price point, like give me a range of the kind of like ballpark range that we're talking for like
So
a
for any
monthly
brand,
retainer.
an agency fee retainer would be between, and other agencies that maybe have a car account would
Yeah.
be way bigger than this, but most of ours are in the like 1 million to 5 million annual retainer range.
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
not okay. So that's annually, depending on
That's
how.
annually, and then on top of that, you would get paid to produce work. That's really just for the staff, and then you get paid to make the ads on top of it.
Right. Then expenses, basically.
Yep. Yeah. So that really pays for your people.
Right. And then would you say you would be considered, are you more of a strategy person or an idea person?
Yeah, I would fall more on the strategy side, the business strategy side.
The business strategy side.
Yeah, not on the idea side, but I like to dabble in everything.
Right.
But yeah, I'm more of the marketing, networking, getting the clients in the door. I am involved in pitching the work to land a client.
Right.
But I'm more on the business relationship and strategy side of the business.
Right. And then you also, I didn't even mention it yet properly, but you wrote a book called The Soulful Art of Persuasion, the 11 Habits That Will Make Anyone a Master Influencer.
That's a bold title.
It's a very bold title, and I like it a lot. And why don't we start with this, since it is in the title? You say there are 11 habits that will make you a master influencer. What the title is, The Soulful Art of Persuasion.
Yeah.
What would you say the best tactic would be to persuade somebody?
Well, I don't think there's one specific tactic, although I can list off a bunch. But as you know, there's 11 of them, but they're sort of centered around 4 major principles. And so those, you want me to just kind of
I can talk about that too. So you have 4 key principles, right? So the first key, let's go with that then. Okay, so you have 4 key principles. The first one is original, right? What does that mean? Be original?
I mean, essentially, it's the idea of leaning into your true self, being yourself, because everyone else is already taken, and it's the power. The power of understanding who you are, what your belief system is, and what who your role models are, how you respond to people, stories that make you unique, what's defined you as a person, and just really, wearing your idiosyncrasies on your sleeve, being who you are. That is sort of a major principle for being persuasive. And there's a lot in selling that people believe it's sort of like the mirror and matching idea of being like the person on the other side of the table, or trying to find those similarities. And that's sort of part of it, but it's much more about standing out and being yourself and being memorable. And that is a technique that works really well for persuasion and for selling. And being who you are. And I think that allows other people to be comfortable being themselves and being vulnerable, and that forms the relationship. Not that you have so many things that are similar, but that the similarity is that you're both vulnerable enough to talk about who you are, what you care about, and you sort of have conversations that are a level beyond surface conversations, and that's essentially what original is. So yeah, and then this idea of, and then the other three are.
But wait, before you even get to the other three, no,
I'll
because
let you steer me. Sorry.
No, because I really like that. I'm a big believer in that myself. But you said something within that key principle of persuasion, which is storytelling. I find that to be a very difficult thing to do myself, and I know a lot of people probably do also. That's like where a lot of anxiety comes. Like that's why even with social media, right? Like I get really anxious because I'm like, shoot, like content creation, telling a story, being vulnerable like that, or even pulling from your own experiences and then extrapolating in a way that resonates with people. That's a talent. How does someone get better at storytelling? Because I do agree with you. I think that's something that makes somebody, their stories about them that builds on their uniqueness, right? And that's how you develop these connections. Or that's what is necessary when you're trying to build your own brand, right? The authenticity of it. How do you do that if you're not necessarily naturally good at it?
Well, anything in the book are habits that you can learn. And so when you do something enough over time, it becomes in your consciousness and it becomes habitual. And so I believe that anyone can be a good storyteller. And sort of part of that is taking the time to really think about stories you want to talk about, things that have defined you, things that have happened in your life, and the lesson learned from them. And it doesn't hurt to have a notebook and spend some time writing those stories down. But the best stories that we tell are events that have happened to us in our life and what's the sort of outcome, but trying to really practice knowing those stories and being able to tell them when you're connecting with someone. The other thing is, why do you love movies or music? What connects you with those movies or music, or a book that you love? It doesn't have to be stories only unique to yourself. It could be well-known stories that people can identify with, but you're looking to pull out for you what was important about that song or album or artist or book or movie, and why. Or not just it's my favorite movie. Well, why is it your favorite movie? What does it connect to within you that can tell someone about yourself? So that's another area of storytelling. It doesn't just have to be stories or events or drama that happened in your life. It can also be pop culture things that connect with you. It's more about going deeper into why does it connect with you versus I like this, I like that, I like this. So that, and anyone can be a good storyteller if you really just take the time to think about it and tell those stories.
Right. And practice, because over time it becomes much more natural if you do it.
Practice is really important. And sometimes even, and it sounds contrived, but it's really not. Sometimes you think about a story and you practice telling it, and you really want to remember the way the story starts and then like sort of the capper at the end. And then the rest you could kind of, it's like telling a good joke. The rest you can kind of massage, but you got to like really stick the landing. Remember the intro and stick the landing.
Yeah.
But like anything, a few people might come out of the womb as like great storytellers, but that's few and far between. Most people that are good storytellers, it's practice. And
yeah. No, I think that's, I mean, it's just, I guess it gets very, when people, me included, when I know I'm not good at something, right? And then I feel like, oh God, here I go again. I got to try this again. It gets so daunting and anxiety ridden, especially that you don't want to do it, right? So like maybe start small by, like you said, not focusing on yourself so much, but focus on something that's more like a connecting point with other people where you can share with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Or
Right.
if it's working out, or
Yeah.
I like boxing, right? Why do I love boxing?
You know,
Maybe think of
Jason, I
yeah.
know more than just working out. I'm just letting you know. You don't have to use that as an example, okay?
All right,
But
fine. There's just those treadmills right behind you.
I
All right.
know,
Why
I
do you love
know.
the Rolling Stones? How about
I,
that? Like,
well, yeah, exactly. I used to be in the music business. That's why. Well, I used to work for record labels before I transitioned into the health and fitness business. So,
what's the best record label you worked for?
uh, it depends on what level, right? So I worked for BMG Music in Canada. Then I moved to, then I did Immortal here in LA, where I am, which is part of Sony. I liked Immortal. It was super cool coming from Canada. And then I moved from Canada to LA, and my office was on the beach, and I could ride my bike to work. And the people were super, super cool. And this guy, Happy Walters, who was the founder of Immortal, had like a gym. He also had like a gym. And at that time, back then, having a gym in your office was very, very,
Luxurious.
very luxury. And also just like, it was just something that no one did. It was super unique. And so that was one. So yeah, I would say that. But then when I went into training for record labels, I kind of like left as a marketing person and then went back as a trainer, a personal trainer.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, I liked MCA Universal because of the people, like my boss or the head of the label. I really, really had a good relationship with. So the truth is not about what the bands were. It was more about the people who were involved. It's all about the corporate culture, the community of people around you that always, for me anyway, make all the difference. Surrounding
I think
yourself,
that's always true.
right?
Yeah.
Like
I always wondered were you working there when labels were just like making tons of money?
tons of money. And so
Yeah.
yeah. And so what happened was they had huge budgets for crazy ass stuff. And I left when all the music stuff actually was not about music. It was much more about like technology. So like when the whole .com business happened, everything was about like iTunes and Napster and whatever, MySpace, whatever that, like it was a long time ago. We're like talking, that's how I started my entire professional career. Right. So,
How do labels make money now? I mean, we'll switch back to my stuff too, but
oh
I
yeah.
always want, I
How to
do
record.
wonder, like, how is streaming just like the way they make money now?
I think
It's
what
like,
happens is they make money through you sign a lot of people and you hope for one huge hit, one huge person to really kind of like drive it home, right? So most people are not making any money. Like most of the talent or the artists on the roster don't do anything. When I was with them, we signed so many people. And a funny story, actually. A girl I used to work with, her name is Michael, and now she goes by Mickey Guyton. Do you know who she is?
no,
She was
I
one of
feel
these
like I should know.
girls. She was one of my favorites. When I was working with her, it was more on the fitness side, right? I didn't have anything to do with her signing, but the guy who hired me at MCA signed her. And she was like, had a voice of an angel. She sounded like Whitney Houston. Like they thought that she was going to be the next Whitney Houston. She was young. She was stunningly beautiful, extraordinarily talented. And they put effort into her to a certain degree, and then what happens is you get dropped for many, many reasons, or it's just not happening. She got re-signed by Babyface. She was hired and she was basically signed and re-signed by tons of labels. Okay. Next thing you know, she was like 15 years old at the time, 16, 17, 18, nothing. This is a girl who was super talented. And then one day I'm watching the Today Show like 2 weeks ago. And it's like, she decided, actually what happened was she decided to leave LA and she's like, you know what, I'm going to go to Nashville and become a country singer. So she said to me, and I'm like, what country? What are you talking about? Like you do totally like soul R&B, like that. She's like, no, I'm going to do this. And she went and she became like, she won like new art. Like this is now like, she left 10 years ago. Anyway, I'm watching the Today Show. Next thing you know, she comes up, they're like, on the, what do you have when they have those things every Friday at the Today Show? They do their concert series.
Yeah,
She
concert series.
she was headlining the concert series, like Mickey Guyton, Artist of the Year, and Grammy nominated, and da da da. I was like, oh my God! So of course I like reached out to her. Point being,
so she changed her whole.
She pivoted hard.
Yeah.
And, she became, now she's super, like she's doing extraordinarily well as a country singer. But this is a great example of people who takes 10 years to be an overnight success, or sometimes 15 years to be an overnight success, right? This girl was working at it. And since she was like 15, 14 years old, and now she's hitting her stride. She's 37 now, or she was already like doing fairly well, I believe, like a few years ago. I don't really know all this, like all the nuances.
That is commitment. She caught that. I mean, I love that. So you just told a killer story, right, from your career.
Yeah,
because we're talking about storytelling.
Yeah,
but it almost, that's like, what I take away from that is, first of all, the ability to adapt, right? Because she changed from different styles. But also this idea of endurance, like stamina. She was like, nothing's going to deter me from this. Perseverance.
It's perseverance.
Nothing's going to deter me from this goal. And I'm going to just do it. And I'll keep figuring out a way in until it happens.
Absolutely. And I want to say, I'm going to give her a shout out. I'm going to tell her to listen to this episode, because that girl, no one deserves it more than that girl. She is quality through and through. She is her inside never changed, with all the back and forth and the resilience that it takes to get up, to basically fall and get right back up again, and then not change the core of who you are, is so commendable. So, yeah. I mean, I just think,
I love that.
Yeah, she's a great girl. And hi, Mickey. So she changed from Michael to Mickey. Yeah, I'll forgive her.
All right, Mickey.
Yeah.
The actor John Hamm was sort of like,
yes,
that. He like just kept going, and then he landed, the Mad Men, because we're talking about advertising.
Yeah.
He landed that role, and his career, he's in his 40s then. And his career took off, but he persevered and didn't let anything deter him.
Absolutely. I remember that, actually, the perseverance. I mean, I really do believe, not to sound like kind of like corny, but I do believe anybody's dream is possible if you have the perseverance, if you have the resilience and the tenacity, right? Like, you have to just stay on that path, because the truth of the matter is most people give up. Most people quit. And it's the people who don't let that kind of like that falling down, that failure stop them from continuing, right?
Yeah.
It's about how you adapt to failure. So, And
it's also that if that's your dream, you sort of outlast a lot of other people too.
Yeah. It's attrition, right?
Attrition. And then you're there.
No, 100%. But since this is about you, not Mickey or John Hamm, which, by the way, I love those stories, though. So I love them. I want to hear about the second key principle of being persuasive and being a master influencer, and that will get us to generous.
Yeah, so generous is really this idea about trying to have the philosophy or the idea that when you cross paths with someone, you make them a little bit better than you were before you cross paths with them. And it's about giving, sort of being generous by nature, by spirit. And this one is counter to, that's how I am now as a person, but I had to develop into this one. Sort of the original concept was easier for me. I kind of came out myself and leaned into it. Mm-hmm. But generous, I wasn't generous. When I started my business, I would sort of hoard contacts, right? And I would think that was the name of the game, that these are my connections, and I'm not, why would I serve them up to, people in my network, because these are my connections. And then you sort of evolve and you mature and you realize that you can, all tides rise all boats, and you can give things away like your connections. You can give advice to competitors in your same space. You can mentor people and find time to mentor and counsel people. You can just have this generosity of spirit that comes back to you in ways you are kind of immeasurable. Mm-hmm. When you have that spirit, you're sort of looked at in a different way, and people are more willing to connect, make recommendations for your company or for you. And it's this idea of like, I'm going to just, when I cross paths with someone or someone asks me for something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to deliver, not because it's quid pro quo, like I expect something back from that person or they owe me a favor, but it's sort of like this universal idea of this generous spirit will come back to me in generous ways. And so that's the second principle of being persuasive. That makes you a persuasive person. And there's some other fine notes underneath that, like practicing positivity, which is an obvious one, but cultivating this idea of gratitude in your life. I think it's also recognizing that anything can turn into something great, even if, I pitch a client and I don't win the business. I've invested in that relationship and I've made that connection. And that's now someone in my network that I can reach out to. And it doesn't mean the relationship has to end. And so whenever I hear a no, and I know this sounds like super cheesy, but it's true. Whenever I hear a no, we don't win something, I always think like, oh, it's just a no for right now.
That's right. And I knew you were going to say that.
I knew. I could tell by your body language, like, here it comes.
Yeah, here it comes. I heard this one before.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
But I actually agree. And even if it is a no for good, a lot of times, and I tell this to people a ton, is that a lot of times it's you get your opportunities from the places you least expect, like the people that you least expect to help you, or those things that you were rejected by. Like a lot of times, to your point, I never got a lot of different business deals or things that I thought were like a shoe-in, and then something else happened and I never got it. But maintaining a relationship with those people ended up helping me in something down the road that I never even knew existed, right? So I agree. And I also think that the idea of being generous, like the idea of abundance versus scarcity, right? Like there's so many people, and I think in every industry, where people hold really close to their chest, their contacts and everything like that. But like, I never did that either. I was kind of very much open like that. And a lot of times, quite frankly, those people never really sometimes panned out. Like if I asked them, and I never really got anything in return.
Yeah, that happens a lot, but you can't let that worry you.
100%. But I feel like because I have a certain mindset of like giving like that, it will kind of pay itself back somewhere else where I never even figured it out. You know what I mean? In another way.
It comes back with compound interest, but you can never pinpoint, because I did that, this thing, it's not right. It's not direct connections, but it's having that mindset and just believing that it will come back in some way. And it's not about giving things away and expecting something back. Right. It's about doing it for the sake of doing it. And, I used to, if people would ask me for advice, or someone starting their own company and they'd reach out, I would just sort of brush them off or ignore them. And then I realized, there's people that help me along my way, and I have to pay it back. And I'm going to mentor other people in the same way. And people that I, barely know will reach out to me and say, do you have 10 minutes? I'm working on this X, Y, and Z thing. I need some counseling, and I'll do it. And I always try to find time for people, even with a lack of, what I don't have is an abundance of time, but I always try to find time to do that and pay it forward. And that generous idea, that generous spirit is good for business. And by the way, it's not short-term transactional thinking. It's not it's more of playing the long game when you're generous. When you're a generous person, it's more of, I know it'll come back down the road.
Yeah.
But it's all a long game. It's not sail to sail to sail to sail.
Totally. I love this. The third key principle is empathy or empathetic.
Yeah.
Which can you kind of just explain what exactly you mean by that?
Yeah, it's really the idea of developing a natural curiosity for other people and trying to understand their point of view and where they're coming from. And it's also having a collaborative nature. And it's, much more of a we mindset than a me mindset. And I find that when you're empathetic and you see, really it starts with a mindset of looking for commonalities, not differences. And I think we all tend to think of, if people don't agree with the way we think, they're idiots or morons or wrong. And I think politics has had a lot to do with that. Vaccines has had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
And I think that you should always come from the point of we're all in this world and we're all similar. We're all going through the human experience. We're all made up of, the same amount of DNA, and we are humans, and we all want the same things, even if our views don't align. And I think that is the hallmark of starting to understand how you can be empathetic towards other people versus sort of bifurcated and in our own little world.
Yeah, I think that today, especially like the times we're in right now, everything's very divided, right? Either if you don't think how I think or you don't agree with me, people just like cut you off. There's no such thing as like dialogue or conversation now. It's super divided and divisive. And I don't know. I think it's worse than it's ever been. I don't know how do you think this is going to continue? Like, what do you think is going to be? How do you really integrate empathy or into somebody? Like, how do you teach empathy, or how do you?
It's a little disheartening where we are right now, because it feels like there's a complete lack of empathy in the world, and then there's always the next thing. When you think it's going to get better, there's like the next thing that comes up that can divide people. But I think we can all kind of, it's about looking at yourself and starting there and trying to develop the idea of empathy and understanding that the commonalities between us and not seeing the differences, and taking that step to like dig deeper into why someone believes what they believe and not just keeping it at the surface.
Yeah. I think in terms of like timing, that's a great thing people should start really kind of try to integrate and kind of think about. It all starts with yourself, right? Like at the end of the day, I can't control you, but I can control myself. And if I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm doing this, try to kind of make it better. Or change.
Or the way you communicate with people. My aunt's an idiot because she won't get a vaccine. And just leave it at that. Like, I'm not going to talk to her again. Or she voted for someone that I don't believe in, or she's against immigration or abortion or whatever it might be. I think you're going to have your own belief system, and you need to keep that belief system. But you can have a conversation without it being, without throwing daggers. And you can find out what is behind that person's belief, so I can at least not agree with them, but I can understand where they're coming from. And that just shows a level of respect and the ability to communicate. So I tell this story of a wealthy friend of mine who was so against immigration, and I could not understand, we're all immigrants in this country. Maybe you can have regulations on it. I get that. But this guy was like, really almost an isolationist about how we should view our country. And I wanted to sort of dig in and understand why. And it turns out that when he was growing up, he was, he lived with his dad. It was just him and his dad. And his dad would lose jobs. He was like a field worker, agricultural field worker. And he would lose his job, and they would sleep in the car for weeks until he could find another job. And he would lose it because some immigrants were coming in and taking his job for less money. And, he was a field hand and kept kind of like not getting paid what he was valued. And so that was ingrained as a kid in his belief system. And so when you understand that, there's events that happen in people's lives that make them hold the beliefs that they have. But at least I understand him versus shouting at each other and not understanding it. So it's taking that one extra step to understand why someone would feel the way that they do.
Precisely.
And you might not understand it, and you might not agree, or you might not agree with it rather, but you understand where they're coming from, and that shows respect and empathy, even if it doesn't show agreement.
Right. No, I think that's exactly it. I think empathy comes from really trying to put yourself also in other people's shoes and understanding why they are, how they are, where they got those ideas from. Because you're right, a lot of times it happens because of their own life experiences that we know nothing about, unless we take the time and effort to kind of dig deeper into why it is that way.
And that goes into persuasion in business, because when you're running a business, or you're, whatever, you're working in a company, and we all have clients of some sort, trying to understand what makes them tick and why they would feel the way they do, or what their needs are.
Right.
That helps us be successful.
No, I agree.
We can do it on a macro level, and then we can do it in our day-to-day work level.
On a micro level. Yeah,
exactly.
And the fourth key principle is soulful. And you talk about the importance of skill hunting. What is that? What is that? What's skill hunting? So
skill hunting, I know you know what skill hunting is, but skill hunting is...
I might know, but other people
may know, but your folks don't know. But really, it's about this idea of every 2 or 3 years, is something that I've implemented, is trying to learn a new skill. Because I think we all go through life, and as we get older, we're like, oh, there's so many things that I wanted to be good at, or I wanted to accomplish, that I'm never going to. And, for your folks listening that might be younger, they might not feel that way, but believe me,
yes, it will happen to them too.
Father time is undefeated.
Yeah.
And we all have a shelf life. And this idea of skillful and skill hunting is every 2 or 3 years, that thing that you wanted to be proficient at, write it down, and that's your extra thing you're going to spend time on for that period, and then you kind of move on. And it doesn't mean you have to master all of these ideas, but it means if I'm into photography, I've never really taken it seriously or given it a shot. Okay, my next skill hunting for the next 2 years is I'm going to really work at photography. And then if it's something that I implement into my daily life, that's great. Or if it's just something that I cracked for 2 years and I have a proficient skill at, that's great too. I'm doing it with chess now, which is something I always wanted to get good at. And I'm playing it with my 13-year-old, trying to really learn the moves and the techniques. And I'm really bad at it, but that was my thing. It was, boxing like 5 years ago, and that's something that stayed with me, and I incorporate that into my life. But when I first started, I had no idea how to do it. It could be running a marathon. It could be learning a language, whatever it is. It could be cooking. I kind of started doing a little bit of that during the pandemic, but it's really just taking one thing at a time, not trying to boil the ocean, and every couple of years learning something new. And you go through that period of really sucking at it, and that's the failure thing that you kind of alluded to. And that is always that there's always learning and discomfort. And when you suck at something, you have to push through it to get to the other side, to get proficient at it. And that there's always so much learning and going through that process over and over again. So that's one part of it. And then the other part of soulfulness is trying to be inspirational. You know, part of it is through skill hunting and always learning new skills and being proficient in more and more things. But it's also giving back in some way and trying to make the world a little bit better of a place than when you found it. And it's giving your time and energy in whatever skill you have. It's applying that skill to something good.
These are great. I like those four key principles. So if we adopt some of these or integrate some of this into our life, we'll be more persuasive overall, basically, right? Because we're persuading not just in business, but in everyday life, right? I mean, persuading you to come to lunch, go to my favorite place for lunch. You know, I'm trying to like convince you, persuade.
To be live on your show.
Right. To be on the treadmills behind me with me.
You come to New York, check out my gym here.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Not just like Zooming all the time. But no, I love that. I think this is great. And so just again, the book is called The Soulful Art of Persuasion, 11 Habits That Will Make Anyone a Master Influencer. How's the book doing, by the way? It's been out for a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's doing well. It was LA Times. It was on the LA Times bestseller list and the Wall Street Journal bestseller list in its early days. And now it's just sort of consistent. I think the book business, the analogy is similar to the music business, where you have like my publisher did Obama's book, right? So it's like you need one massive hit that kind of carries everything else. And I'd say I'm in the mid-tier successful rung. And then there's like hundreds of thousands of books that, you know, no one hears about or knows about. But I think it's the same game as the music business. You make so many bets and you hope that, you know, a dozen pay off and they carry everything else.
Totally.
But yeah, it's done really well. I mean, I can't complain. It's done incredibly well for me.
That's incredible. Who's your publisher?
Publisher is Random House.
Random House. Oh, okay, yeah. Got it. Okay, I'm actually writing a book right now. My publisher is Hachette. So,
cool.
Yeah.
How's it going?
It's very stressful. I mean, it's a lot of work, and the business, you know, like you said, the publishing world has changed and shifted a lot, but but it's stressful because you have like deadlines, and I want to make sure, like, you write a book now, it doesn't come out for like a year and a half, you know, sometimes even longer.
My book took me 3 years because I worked on it was my first book. So I worked on the proposal for a year, and then it was about a year and a half of working on it and writing it, and then it came out like a year after that. So it's a long journey. What's
very
that?
Long. It's a very like years later when nobody cares about your message anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like okay, yeah,
exactly.
But,
11 other books have come out since with the same title, but
it's fun. It's worthwhile for sure. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Jason, this is amazing. How do people find more about you? Give us some information about where to find you or your book and et cetera.
Yeah, my book info is at thesoulfulart.com. My company is Mekanism, Mekanism.com. So it's Mekanism with a K, and I'm just on the socials at Jason_Harris.
Well, you've been amazing. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Habits and hustle, time to get it rolling. Stay up on the grind, don't stop, keep it going. Habits and hustle, from nothing into something. All out, hosted by Jennifer Cohen. Visionaries, tune in, you can get to know them. Be inspired, this is your moment. Excuses, we ain't having that. The Habits and Hustle podcast, powered by Happiness.